Hello, everyone, and welcome. I've got the lights in my face. I can't see everyone, but it's a full room. My name is Hamza. I co-lead McKinsey's client service practice for the metaverse. You might have heard of the term. We have a fantastic discussion today, and it's a bit of a provocative theme, which is, what is the metaverse? Is it future? Is it fad? Is it fraud? Is there an element of all of this in there? We have a fantastic panel for the discussion today as well. I have the privilege of introducing them, and maybe I'll ask them to join me up on stage as well then. Why don't we move on to the panelists' names, and then Alvin, I'll start with you. Our first panelist today is Alvin Wang Graelin. He is the China president at HTC. He leads all of the Vive VR and smartphone business and has been doing so since 2016. He's also now the Global VP of Corporate Development, driving strategic partnerships. He's the Vice Chairman of the Industry of VR Alliance. He's the President of the Virtual Reality VC Alliance, and he oversees the ViveX VR accelerators in Beijing and Tel Aviv, where I understand you've made over 100 investments so far. Welcome, Alvin. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Hamza.
Leslie, think I see you behind the lights. Leslie is the head of trend and innovation scouting at Nokia, based in Silicon Valley. She focuses on assessing tech disruptions, including robotics, drones, visual analytics, generative AI. We'll talk a little bit about that, and especially VR and AR. She does her daily fitness routine also in VR. I'm hoping to hear more about that as well. And her book about the purpose of the metaverse, Interconnected Realities, is coming out later this year. So, Leslie, thank you very much and welcome. Sule from Autonomous. He is the Chief Digital and Strategy Officer of Autonomous. He is also the CEO of the Cognitive Solutions practice, which is helping build the cognitive foundations of cities. So city-wide programs globally, using data and analytics to connect, compute, and contextualize and improve decision-making for city planners and builders. Previously, he was responsible for formulating the vision and the delivery of a city-wide neural network, merging physical and virtual for the smart city NEOM in Saudi Arabia. So hoping to hear more about that as well. Suli, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome. And finally, we have Jason Tu from ZTE. He brings over 20 years of expertise in telecoms R&D, from 2G through to 5G and 6G now. He's the principal scientist of the NFV and SDN solution. He's also the technical spokesperson at ZTE. He's deeply involved in mobile infrastructure, digital transformation, and also shaping our collective digital future, including the metaverse. That's our panel today. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll take the opportunity to join you. Hope you can still hear all of us. So thank you very much for joining again. Maybe we'll take this head on, right? This provocative headline. I'd love to just get a sense of, you're coming from different parts of the world, different organizations. There is, of course, there's a general theme that we are focusing on today. But how do you define the metaverse in your organizations? And where do you stand between that sort of future fad fraud? I'm hoping not the third one, but would love to hear from you. And maybe we go across the panel on that one as well.
Okay, sure, I'll go first. Definitely, I think this is one of the biggest confusions in the industry, is that everybody has a different definition. So I'm glad you're starting with this question. From my perspective, whatever the definition is, it has to be short, it has to be easy to understand. And my perspective is that it is actually just the 3D version of the internet that we've been building for the last 30, 40 years. But then it's powered by AI, because I think AI is going to be a core piece of what makes this metaverse possible, and mostly interface through XR devices. Not primarily for the next 2-3 years. Most people will probably use phones, laptops, tablets, but over probably the 4, 5, 10-year period, most people will migrate to an XR device to do a full immersive experience in this 3D internet. So that's my definition. And in terms of those three terms, I think you can probably tell that I'm on the future side of the business, of the forecast. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ellen. Leslie.
Yeah, so I'm from Nokia, and within Nokia, we have a definition of the metaverse it's the merge of the digital with the physical. And that's fundamentally it. There's a lot more you can put in there. I would add real time. But I think really the takeaway, and actually in the writing of my book, which you were kind enough to mention, I asked the question, what is the purpose of the metaverse? And I looked at each of the different iterations of the metaverse right now and asked that question of each part. And what I concluded after going through that thought process is that the metaverse is actually not about immersion, it's more about presence. It's about real-time presence. It's linking you in your physical reality with information or a person or a place that is physically somewhere else. Bringing that to you in your physical reality, but not taking you away from that physical reality. And so, yeah, actually, I'll stop there. I could keep going, but I'll stop there.
Yes, which F?
Oh, future, absolutely, absolutely. But there's some metaverse iterations out there that are kind of the other two. But that's, yeah, not all metaverses are equal.
Got it. You've got another vote for future for me, for the F. So autonomous, our definition of the metaverse is that link between the physical and that digital world. I think it's what makes NEOM very exciting. You actually get to, in a greenfield environment, start with the virtual first, build excitement, build communities, and then help that inform build the physical space. And I think what you end up having is a better community, more interaction where the physical world actually complements the virtual world.
Well, I come from ZTE, so we believe metaverse is kind of a very important part of the digital future. Okay, let me explain this. Let's come back to see 100 years ago, maybe. Firstly, we have a black and white picture, and then with the technology evolution, we have black and white films. Then colorful films. Those kind of technology bring us, for everybody, an easy and economy way to access a virtual world. You can enjoy maybe 2 hours on the virtual world with the 3D films and something like that. Think about video games. This is not a colorful or 3D world, but you have an interactive with the gaming if you enjoy the gaming. So we believe metaverse is going to be an update of this one. In the future, metaverse will giving the world, everybody, an easy and economy way that to access a completely virtual world with a more real user experience. So we believe it's going to be a very important part of the future digital society.
Fantastic. So that's super helpful, and I think different definitions, of course, but there was one common element in there, which is that this is not just something that came up last year, right? This has been a journey that we've been on for a long time, both from a technological point of view and a human experience point of view. Having said that, probably fair to say that last year there has been a bit of an explosion of interest, right? And Leslie, to your point, not all virtual experiences, not all platforms are equal. When it comes to this notion of the fad, right, and when it comes to sort of the near term that we have seen in this last year, what are your thoughts on that? Where is there the difference?
Yes. Oh, now, this is a personal view. I have to state this. This is not a Nokia view that I'm about to say. My personal view is that the blockchain and Web3 metaverse real estate area, I have a real problem with that one, because if you're looking about how to value real estate in the metaverse, what's happened up to now is, Snoop Dogg builds a mansion in Decentraland, and then or the Sandbox, actually, sorry, and then like the land next to that sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm sorry, in the metaverse, location no longer applies. I can have something anywhere and have a portal to Snoop Dogg's place instantly. So we're doing a little too much replicating of the physical world in the metaverse, where the metaverse should be freeing us of every constraint of the physical world and allowing our imaginations to go crazy. And it's like a little bit, early television. people filmed theater performances. And it wasn't until they realized, oh, we can move the camera, oh, we can do things, we can take this outside. That's actually, when things really, you start developing the potentiality of the new medium. And in fact, where we are in terms of the metaverse is kind of the 1993 time of the internet. We're at a point where we can see that there's something here. We're not really sure what it is. So we really have to, and this sounds kind of silly, we really have to believe. And we really have to build the infrastructure. Because once the infrastructure is in place, the entire end, all the way from the headsets, through the networks, to the data centers, to the cloud, when all of that's in place, that's when the creatives can come in and show us what this thing is really for.
Makes a lot of sense. And we move from 1993 of the internet potentially to this notion that this is not the first time we've been here, right? So if you go to 2003 and you have Second Life there, which saw a lot of interest, it went down, although still a fairly active economy with a certain size right now. I'd love to get a sense of, if we're saying it's not fad or it's not all fad, right? What is really different this time around? Jason, you talked about infrastructure as well. Like, what's the version of the metaverse that we are seeing emerging now, and why do we think it has more staying power now?
Yeah, metaverse, as we understand, is a virtualized parallel world that could be shall to be accessed by everybody. But let give me an example. So, young men like to fighting each other. When I was young, I don't have a smartphone. It's also the TV and films are rare, so we fight on the street. But nowadays, my teenager son, they fighting on the smartphones, laptops, day and night. I don't know. Yeah. So think about this. Somebody said, okay, maybe metaverse is kind of second life, right? But it's not true, because for one person, you can just focusing one word. No matter it's a real or visualized, it's just one word. So this is something restrict. So in this way, think about this one. For example, ZTE is kind of a digital infrastructure maker. We not only providing 5G connections end-to-end, but also the cloud infrastructure to the verticals. So in this way, we believe metaverse need to be or should be basing on a very powerful infrastructure. Otherwise, for example, if the broadband access is expensive or limited, think about the experience. Okay, let's think about this one. If as we're talking a few moments later, think about the exciting 3D games need a very expensive terminal. So it's also limited to the user experience. But if we make this 3D video renting on the cloud, and the cloud could be shared to everyone who needs this one. So the cost could be shared everybody. So the digital infrastructure will have a very, acting as a very important point of the pushing metaverse. Go ahead. And of course, to improve the user experience of the metaverse. Yeah, so I talking about the second life. Forget about the second life. Go outside, make some exercise, and keep diet. Let's make you live longer.
Makes sense. Let's focus on the first life, yeah. I get it. And there's this notion that some of this hype in the system that has been there, some of this gas in the system, if you will, right? It's coming from the fact that the end state vision is far away. So there's still a lot to be shaped, right? I'd love to get a sense of, even if that is the case, where is there real value in your mind for consumers and businesses today? And maybe, Alvin, we start with you and take your view on that.
Yeah, and actually maybe going back slightly to the Second Life question is, because Phil Rosedale is a friend of mine, right? So he founded Second Life, and you're right, they still have like 1 million users that are actively, like daily active users.
Active, transacting.
But I think they were too early, right? Just being too late is just as bad as being too early. And the reason they're too early is that they just, the technology, both from a network perspective, as Jason mentioned, but also from the rendering perspective, from people's use case perspective, hasn't gotten there yet. and from a device to consume it. Because 3D content should be consumed in an immersive device, something that's on your head, because that's how our brain has evolved over the last 5 million years, is to live in a 3D world. So it actually, a 3D version of whatever you're doing in the digital world is the most natural form of how to consume content. But now we're at a point where, because of the progress of phones making everything much smaller, making everything much cheaper, devices of, like what we just announced this week, this thing sometimes looks like glasses, but has ability to do AR, MR, VR, has connect to PC, connect to network, connect to phone, and it's standalone, everything, right? That kind of a device means that anybody can put on a headset and jump to whatever space they want to and have the real world or the virtual world be able to switch, directly switchable between those forms. When you have that kind of a device, and now you have AI happening all around this, where you see the amazing kind of contents creating, the amazing kinds of interactions that are created, having hand tracking, eye tracking, full body tracking. Without AI, that's not possible. Right? So all of these things are maturing at the same time so that now you can actually have a satisfactory experience. That's something that wasn't possible 20 years ago. And the other thing is what's happened over the last 3 years with the pandemic, where the world sees that you can actually function from a much more digitized world where you don't have to travel, you don't have to see people face to face, and you can be functional, you can be productive. That wasn't really the case 20 years ago. So all of the combination of these things is making a more digitized society possible and acceptable, socially acceptable. I think that's the combination of why I think this is going to be different this time. So
Makes a lot of sense.
And actually, if I can just add to that, Alvin, one thing that you didn't mention is the hands-free concept. Because a lot of the things talking about seeing something three-dimensional, you can do that today with, a Snapchat filter or something like that on a smartphone. But it's only when we get the device out of our hands and put it on our head and then free up our hands, that's when the magic happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On that note, I'm actually curious to see what the maybe 4 or 5 years down version of MWC looks like. But I shouldn't say anything. Don't want to say the wrong thing here. But Sue, what would be your thoughts on where is both at an individual level, I guess, but also at the larger level of societies? Where is their value already today?
Yeah, sure. I think from a NEOM perspective, when we're building out this smart city, this massive CapEx project, it's a safe environment. It's a safe sandbox, if you will, for us. You've heard about the line, this video of us building this 170-kilometer long city, 200 meters wide, up to 500 meters tall. It's a massive undertaking. How do you ensure livability? How do you build that foundation for residents, consumers, businesses, enterprises that come in to innovate, to shape what the future looks like? Well, we use industrial metaverse technologies. We use a digital twin exchange because we've done these simulations. We've designed this in a way where it's more fit for purpose later, right? Saves a ton of costs for us.
Makes a lot of sense. And that takes that has infrastructural requirements, right? That all needs to be enabled. Maybe we'll start with you, Jason, but I'm keen to hear everyone's views actually. What would you say are the main infrastructure requirements, the main technological hills to climb to get to this end state vision?
Yes, we understand, metaverse is kind of hot words all these 2 years, but it seems meet some difficult. To my understanding, the user experience is not so satisfied by most of the people. Why? If we think about this one, metaverse is a virtualized world. It could be for everybody easily and economically to access anywhere in the world. No matter I was covered by 5G, Wi-Fi, blah, 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 something. So we need a very strong network that make everyone in every place to make access the metaverse, the world, easily and economically. So this is one thing. Another thing is about cloud. Metaverse is kind of a virtualized parallel world. Maybe it's not one, maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 plus. It could be some 3D content. And it need to be renting for some different viewpoint. So in this way, we need a very powerful cloud infrastructure to make this 3D or MR content real time to the terminal, I mean to the users, basing on the broadband access. So the cloud infrastructure, especially the cloud on the edge, because low latency, will be needed. The third one, IoT. So we understand we need a virtualized world, but what is the world it should be like? How about we duplicate, make the digital twin of the existing world? So think about if we have everything connected by the network, that is, we have a IoT sensor, we have camera everywhere. So it will be easier for the content maker to duplicate, I mean, make the digital twin of the real world. So that is splendid. So you can try, for example, you can join this session no matter whatever in the world. So I think the digital infrastructure, including the connection, the cloud, and the IoT is very important. And of course, ZTE, we defined ourselves as the driver of the digital world, or digital economy. And we devoted ourselves as an innovation technology to pushing those digital infrastructure to the digital world, including metaverse.
Makes sense. So I would agree with all of that. Other thoughts though on this, because there is the infrastructure, there is the layers on top that we get to the devices, the interface devices as well. Would love to hear from the rest of the panel too.
Yeah, well, at Nokia, the three main metaverse areas that we're focused on are the industrial, the enterprise, and eventually the consumer metaverse. But it's really important to understand what kind of connectivity is being used for the metaverse. Quite frankly, the metaverse today is a Wi-Fi story, straight up. And so that makes it a fiber story when you're looking at the connectivity behind it. It's a fiber to backhaul. So when I talk to our customers who are the operators of the world, I'm like, you know what, the metaverse right now, not so much 5G. Unless you're talking about enterprise, that industrial or enterprise, if you have any kind of a situation where you've got a giant video feed, like feed coming off of a 360-degree camera, or something that has very low latency, like teleoperations for a robot or something, or if you need security, so you need a hardened pipe that nobody can tap into, any of those situations are when private 5G is necessary, and then you would take something like an HTC and slap a 5G dongle onto it and away you go. But so from our point of view, from the connectivity point of view, the enterprise and the industrial metaverses of today, because they certainly exist today, are really going to be the training ground for the big show, which is going to be the consumer headset that comes later, because that's where we're going to need the bandwidth and the latency in the macro networks. So we got to get it right in the micro networks before the big show at the end of this decade, towards the end of this decade, because that's going to really hit us hard. And if we're not ready for it, we're not going to be ready for it.
I like that. Actually, there is one, that last word you were talking about, the end of the decade, because I think a lot of people think...
Yeah, sorry, that was please refine that.
A lot of people think that the metaverse is already here. I just want to reemphasize, we're just starting to get into that process. And
Internet 1993.
Yes, so for the metaverse as it's intended, as it's described in something like a snow crash, we're probably 5 to 10 years away. So just make sure everybody have at least a common mindset versus a lot of people say, oh, we're building the metaverse or we're building a metaverse. None of those are really true. If they're telling you that, they probably don't know what they're talking about.
I'm very much with you on that as well. I hope we don't end up in the precise snow crash version of it, because that's a bit dystopian. But
well, the snow crash metaverse is not so bad. The
That's
snow
true.
crash
That's
real
true.
world, it sucks.
it's what you do with the technology. It's not the technology itself. I'm with you on that, actually.
Yeah.
That's true. But that actually brings us neatly to this point around the... so we talked about the technological implications, right? And the things that we need to build, not just next year, but over many years. Maybe let's talk a little bit about the human or the societal implications of it, right? Again, I'd love to hear from the panel, but Leslie, I know you're covering some of this in your book that's coming out as well, so maybe we kick it off with you and then take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I hear a lot of times, people are saying, well, the metaverse, what if people just, Ready Player One style, get sucked into the metaverse and then never return to the physical world? If you take a look at gamers right now, and what they do is they communicate with each other in games. And if the game that they're playing does not actually give them a way to communicate directly with the other people that they're playing with, whether they know them or not, they open a Discord channel. They find a way to communicate. And so what I take from this is that people don't go into the digital world to avoid other people. They go into digital worlds to meet more people and to meet people who are not physically located. So if you don't happen, if you're a bit of an oddball in your high school and who wasn't, then this lets you find your tribe wherever in the world they may be. And so I actually really see, from a social point of view, the metaverse is going to be a lifesaver rather than this thing where people end up socially isolated and huddled away from the world. The metaverse is going to be exactly the opposite.
I love that idea.
I think the investment in collaboration and people interacting is spot on, right? Interactions between people, interactions with each other, interactions with software, interactions with machines, interactions with devices through devices is where the future is going. So I think a major skill set that we'll all develop, that will harden, will differentiate us and our kids, will actually be interface literacy.
Nicely put, I like that.
Yeah. And I think it's one of these things where as you gain interface literacy, it's our ability to adjust, adapt, understand into it in new interaction scenarios. I'll give you an example. If you check out my LinkedIn, that's not a plug, but I've got 3 boys. Nico, who's my 14-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he plays chess. And for as long as I can remember, since he's 4 or 5, we'd hop in the minivan and drive to a chess tournament. And he'd play, and all of this stopped when, January 2020, when COVID hit. And when things came back over the board, when people started coming back 2 years later, guess who the really good players were? They're not the same ones from before. They're the ones that played virtually, right? They played both ways. They played on the mobile. They played over internet. So it shows us that us adjusting to that and having strong interface literacy is the way of the future.
Actually, my 17-year-old son plays chess over the internet on his phone constantly. Yeah. So
Love it.
They might have played each other. We know, yeah.
Chess parents.
Fantastic. And I like this idea of the physical not being divorced from the virtual. I like this idea of people not being isolated in their own worlds. It is very much a social activity, right? And even when we talk about gaming, there's this notion that gaming is a niche thing. There's over 3 billion gamers today, so if you're trying to avoid people by moving into a virtual world, it won't last for too long.
Yeah.
I get
Actually,
that.
even to extend beyond that, I think it's not just a person-to-person type of social. It's also a maybe even cross-border type of issue, because
100%.
once you're inside the metaverse, no matter where you are in the world, you're just the same distance away from anybody else. And the fact that right now so much of the conflict that we have between people is the lack of understanding, is that physical distance creates a border that separates you from understanding other people, whether it's traveling or whether it's language issues. All of those things go away when you have essentially a common society. And with AI doing instant translation, you don't have that language barrier, so you can talk to anybody else anywhere in the world and have that face-to-face-like conversation in the metaverse, whether it's to an avatar or whether to a real person representation. And that allows you to create a certain level of understanding and closeness that you can't have over Zoom or over an email. And once you have that, then I think the understanding will then allow you to create compassion and take an extra perspective that removes a lot of the nationalistic conflicts or the racial conflicts or religious conflicts that we have. So I think once this actually becomes widely adopted, we should become a more peaceful world, hopefully.
It goes back to the notion of find your tribe as well, right? But without the constraints of distance and the radius around the tribe as well. So
And just a quick example. When we had a boba tea place open up in our neighborhood in California, and I knew what boba tea was because I've traveled to Singapore and Hong Kong. My kids already knew because of their hanging out in gamer fora with kids from Singapore and Hong Kong. And so they were telling me about it. And this, it's this multiculturalism, this world understanding. Alvin, I see exactly what you just described as well.
Yeah, there's an opportunity for this level of inclusiveness that won't be able to exist anywhere else. So we're very excited about that at NEOM.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with you that metaverse will set up a virtualized place for social. We experienced a terrible 3 years about pandemic. Of course, we understand that the company like Zoo have increased very sharp, okay, dropped, because I know the experience of a video conference is good, much more better than 5 years ago. But think about the metaverse. So if we do have a metaverse, we can not only make a face-to-face talking, not only talking, how about dancing? Yeah, so sporting. So I think this is also very hopeful application for metaverse. Think about it. We have 8 billion people in this narrow earth. So if the metaverse can create some virtualized space, no matter how far we are, so we can find some place, some way to communicate each other. That is very important. Maybe we don't need afraid about, okay, wow, maybe somebody will just lock in some virtualized. Don't worry about that. AI, even GDP, is not smart enough. Nobody want to social with a stupid machine. Okay, we want to social with a real person, even is far away, in the metaverse space, but it's a real person. Okay.
I understand. And that version of the metaverse is a lot more inspiring, right?
Yeah.
I get that completely. In the spirit of building a deeper understanding, and we'll take some questions from the audience as well. I'm trying to keep a look on the time as well. But in the spirit of building a deeper understanding, maybe trying to now think of how the metaverse interplays with other technologies as well, right? And these other big shifts that we are seeing that are also not like one-year shifts, but longer-term shifts. And one clear one that the metaverse always gets sort of muddled up with is Web3. You alluded to this as well, Leslie. Alvin, I see you nodding. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think Web3 is one of those things that people actually sometimes call the metaverse Web3 and have them conflated. And I want to make sure people understand they're two completely separate parallel tracks of technology. One that's very blockchain focused and more transactional focused, which is the Web3 side, whereas the metaverse is really about 3D and immersive experiences. So they're completely different tracks. But there are places where they overlap. Right? There will be reasons why having blockchain technology together in a virtual world allows for maybe more portability, more interoperability between separate worlds. So you can bring your assets around, or you can bring your ID around. But there are, there's not a requirement for full decentralization of the metaverse. There will be actually parts of the metaverse that will be more centralized and actually will be more functional because it's centralized. Oh, yeah. Right? So I'm not poo-pooing the whole blockchain concept, but I think there are certain people that have misused it, as what Leslie is saying, that has created a bad name for it. In fact, just at CES last month, we made an announcement that we're partnering with Neil Stephenson, the guy who wrote Snow Crash. He's building a new layer 1 blockchain specifically for creating an open, interoperable metaverse, which we feel that vision is the right vision, yes. Right? If we're not there to create the fast dollar, trying to create it, issue some tokens or some NFTs and sell something and make a quick buck and go away, I think those people, we don't want to be associated with them. But the fact that Neil's putting his name behind this project and having spent a lot of time talking with him, I really feel like he's sincerely trying to create some long-term value. I think so. In those cases, with the right partner, with the right technology, together with the metaverse and Web3, can create an even better solution in certain scenarios.
And Neil's come out recently as well. He doesn't have a very positive view on NFTs as well. So he's also trying to, back to the same question as well.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. We talked about Web3. What about generative AI, which is of course, like if the metaverse was the 2022 almost word of the year, generative AI is the notion that we're discussing now. But would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I actually studied that 30 years ago. It's one of my topics. I was a computer science at MIT. I actually feel like a lot of people are saying, oh, because generative AI is so hot, metaverse is going down. I completely think it's the opposite. It's metaverse will go up because of generative AI.
Yes.
Think about every single of the 100 million websites out there, of the 5 million apps out there, there's going to be a 3D version of those content has to be created for the metaverse and when it becomes mature. if everything was hand done, it would take forever. Right? But with generative AI, you can do that in 1/10 or 1/100th the time that you would to do it manually. And the fact that that technology is starting to mature now means that we're solving the biggest problem that's holding back XR adoption and metaverse adoption is the lack of quality content that people can use every single day. Right? Now, let me say, the biggest thing holding back the metaverse is not network, it's not hardware, it's not any specific technology. It's just the lack of quality content. Once there's good content, good use case, even if the hardware is not perfect, even if the network is not perfect, people will use it. Right? I mean, remember when we were using Atari devices? It's a little white box that moves a little thing, and we were excited about it. Right? That was not high fidelity, and that was not immersive, but people got into it. And this is 40 years ago. Right? So fidelity is not the reason holding back the metaverse adoption.
Yeah, I think the really powerful things with, particularly in regard to the metaverse, with generative AI, I mean, everybody's talking about ChatGPT, but some of the other OpenAI products, like Codex, which allows you to code on the fly, for you to use natural language to describe a kind of program that you want, and then Codex goes and it figures out the right language to choose, and then it does the coding for you. So think about this. If we have these head-mounted devices that allow us to see things and to record the world, and we can write our programs for those on the whim, the spur of the moment. Like I could, say, okay, glasses. Anytime I speak to somebody while I'm at Mobile World Congress for more than 30 seconds, record their badge and then give me a list at the end of the day of the timestamp when I spoke to all those people. Go. Then you have that. I think this is going to really upend everything. The software business as we know it, possibly kicking into the hardware business as we know it. Connectivity, I mean, it's because democratization of coding that may be the most powerful thing that this combination of the metaverse and metaverse and generative AI brings. And we're not going to recognize this. We can't even imagine where this is going, frankly. Yeah.
I'm absolutely with you on that. So inspiring as a vision of what this could be, so not just more immersive, but also more responsible in very many ways. Before we open up to audience questions, there's clearly there's a lot that's to be shaped still, right? If you were to say, what is it that you would expect, not in the 5-10-year horizon, but what is it that you expect to materialize in the next 1 or 2 years? If we go around the panel, I'd love to get a sense of what do you think is coming up soon?
Why don't we start on that side?
All right.
Yeah, okay. So I understand most of the country in the world has deployed some 5G access. And also, 5G is a kind of a network based on the cloud. That is, nowadays we can get some CloudNet service in some country. China, East Asia, Europe, or North America, something. But I have to say this kind of digital infrastructure is not good enough for the splendid metaverse application or terminal. Think about I do believe, or ZTE as a driver of the digital world or digital economy, we do believe maybe in the next several years, we need the next generation CloudNet infrastructure that could really make the ubiquitous access to everyone easily with the economy price, everyone, that next generation digital infrastructure will explode the splendid future of the metaverse. Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think we hold on to that long-term interoperable metaverse and metaverse vision. But I think the aligned incentives that require us to kind of to make that happen will take some time, especially the economical ones that we've kind of touched on. So I think in the next 1 or 2 years, I think you see 1 or 2 core platforms break away from the pack. I think you see some level of standardization, from my perspective, hopefully around identity. But that's really my view, right? We're still early in the game. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the questions that we're always asking at Nokia is, what is the role of the operator in the metaverse? And from my personal view on this is that connectivity is only going to be one small part of the role that operators play in the creation of the metaverse. You just said a really key word, identity, right? The Ministry of Economy in Dubai has created a metaverse where you can come and do business, and you can legally sign contracts in that metaverse. In other words, there is your avatar in that metaverse has the legal ability to represent you. This question of identity, of verification of the legal identity of avatars, that is a role that operators may be able to provide. This idea of validation, this idea of being a centralized clearinghouse for a lot of the important legal and regulatory things, you know, I'm throwing it out there. I think that this is the kind of thing, getting away from connectivity. Operators are extremely well put. They're a trusted central player in this. And yeah, I think we're going to really see some exciting advances in the role that operators play in all this.
Fantastic, thank you.
So I think over the next few years, there's going to be two types of metaverse experiences created. One will be more government regulated metaverses, and one will be more walled garden enterprise-driven metaverses. So things that are, let's say in Apple or Microsoft or something, they will probably create some platform that they will try to centrally control from a private enterprise perspective. But there will be places like China that will try to create a national managed metaverse across multiple enterprises that are running within that region. And you know, whichever it is, whichever creates a large enough critical mass will be able to teach us a lot in terms of having a multi-100 million or billion user type of environment. Will teach us what is the proper way to manage a 3D internet. And the types of experiences, the type of services that are going to be needed, and the types of equipment that would be preferred, et cetera, right? The type of use cases that will be most suitable. So, you know, I think China is actually in a very good position to be one of, or if not the first country to create a billion-person metaverse experience. And I think could actually be very helpful for creating learning that be passed to the rest of the world. So I think we're running low on time.
But this is very helpful, and it would be interesting to see the next version of TCP/IP, I guess.
Yes.
We have very little time. We could take one or maybe two questions, unless I get told not. We have a hand up already. If you just ask, we might just be able to hear you, by the way.
Oh, wait, here comes a microphone.
Oh, there we go.
Now it's working. Many thanks for the panel. I enjoyed very much. Thank you to all the speakers. I have one question on the social aspects of the metaverse that you discussed. One of the things that was mentioned is that indeed the metaverse provides additional ways for people to communicate, in particular for those who are, say, not physically present. But my question is about those who are physically present. Doesn't the metaverse pose an additional risk for those, say, reduced interaction for those who are in the immediate physical world of the users? Think of the teenagers, for instance. That's my question.
Sorry, I feel very strongly about this one. For me, so the question that I keep asking is, what problem does a metaverse solve? And one of the problems that we have right now is if we want to have any interaction with a computer, if we want to interface with a computer, we have to stare at a screen. And our gaze dead-ending in a screen, that's the problem you're talking about right there. And so the metaverse, by taking the screen away, and especially the head-mounted devices, that reconnects our gaze with the physical world and the people in it. I think the metaverse is actually going to solve the kind of unspoken screen problem that we have right now.
Yeah. In fact, we did a study specifically on this issue where we had people in two different offices, two groups, interacting through a video versus people that were all in different places in a virtual environment. And we found that the people in the two offices actually became less productive because they started fighting with each other because they thought, my office is right, your office is wrong, and it created a tension. Additionally, by having people together in the same physical space, there's a power structure of who's the manager and who do you listen to, who talks first, who talks last. Whereas when you're all around one table together, it actually creates more equality and more openness for people to express their issues. So they came up with more creative answers that way than actually being physically together in two different locations.
Fantastic. I think we're out of time, but Alvin, Leslie, Sue, Jason, thank you very much for your time. This has been fantastic, and I hope it's okay for me to ask the audience to come find you, come see you if they have questions or they want to
Absolutely.
open the
Sure,
conversation.
yeah, we'll be around for
Yeah.
a bit.
It'll be fun.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.